Hello and welcome to a special edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today on Wednesday, July 22nd. It's also a great pleasure to be joined in our virtual studio by the three candidates who are running for the Democratic Party's two nominations for the state representative seats for the Bennington 4 district. As many of you know, that's the district that includes the towns of Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and most of Sunderland. So here with us today are the three candidates running in the Democratic Party's primary, which will be held on August 11th, although early voting is already underway, and you can cast your ballot at any time between now and then. The top two vote getters of the three candidates we're going to be hearing from shortly will go on to appear on the November ballot. And without any further ado, let's meet them. Very pleased to welcome today Representative Kathleen James, who is the incumbent office holder, and she won election in 2018, 2 years ago, for her first term as a state representative. Had so much fun in Montpelier that she wants to go back for a second term, and has also served on the House Education Committee as well. Representative James, thank you very much for being with us today.
You bet.
Jamie Dufour is a local business owner who is making her first bid for publicly elected office. In addition to operating her businesses here in town for many years, she was active in the Manchester and the Mountains Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we're very pleased to have Jamie with us today. Jamie, thank you for making the time to be with us.
Thank you for having us, Andrew.
And last but hardly least, we have Seth Bongartz with us. He is another candidate for the state representative seat. As many of you know, Seth was until very recently the president at Hildene, the Lincoln family home, and he also is seeking a return to Montpelier. He was a state representative from the former district when it was a one seat district just consisting of Manchester at the time, from 1981 to 85, and then went on to serve one term in the state Senate from 1987 to 1989 before going into law practice, and is also looking to return to Montpelier. So again, thank you all for being with us to share your views on the major issues facing the district and the state as a whole. And we'll look forward to a really interesting and informative conversation, I'm sure. Also, I just wanted to say thank you all for running. Running for state office is not easy. It is difficult, arduous, and particularly in this time, I think, with such a divided political environment going on out there, really important, maybe more important than ever before. So thank you. Thank you for putting yourselves forward for public office. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew, for doing this. We all appreciate that as well.
Well, we'll do our best here to shed some light on these issues and inform the voters. And let me just quickly review our ground rules for the audience. We're going to be structuring this sort of as a formal debate in a way. Each candidate will make a 2-minute long opening statement, and from there to 2 rounds of questions. The first responder, if you will get 2 minutes to answer the question. And then the other 2 candidates will get 1 minute each to reply or comment upon. We'll go through our panel twice, so for a total of 6 questions. We should have then some time left over for sort of a more open-ended conversation, discussing some of the issues that either we may have already spoken to or have not yet come up. And then we will conclude with a 1 to 2 minute long closing statement from each one of the candidates. So that's the way we're going to do it. And without any further ado, let us get started. Ordinarily, we might have come up with some clever way to figure out who was going to go first, second, or third. But in this Zoom era, I guess I decided to exercise a moderator's prerogative and just decided we're going to keep it simple and go by alphabetical order in terms of last names. So, Seth, over to you. Help us get started.
Well, thank you. I'm running for the legislature because I think I can contribute. I've been involved in public service for the entirety of my adult life, from serving on a rescue squad and the zoning board in my 20s, in the legislature in my 20s and 30s, to helping conceptualize and make successful the school fund that helps save public education here in Manchester, to serving as town moderator, to helping create and then serving as chair of the Manchester Community Land Trust. And by the way, we have a lot of successful projects under our belt. And I now chair the Burr and Burton Board. On a county level, I have previously served as a state senator, and I help conceptualize and bring to life the shires in order to bring the people of the entire county, the two ends of the county and everything in between, together socially and economically. I'm really proud of that effort. On a statewide basis, I served on the board of and actually chaired the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont, the nonprofit, and I've been appointed by the governor and the speaker of the House to serve on commissions examining funding for schools and affordable housing. I've put in a lot of time, and the real point of that is that I've learned a lot, especially about how to work with others and how to get things done. The next couple of years are going to be the hardest in this state since World War II. This pandemic has had a devastating impact on the economy, on small businesses, and ultimately on people. These are people we all know and people we all care about. The job of the legislature is going to be to help people in need, to help our small business sector recover, to keep our education system afloat, and to lay the groundwork for a more resilient economy as the recovery gets underway. There's always an opportunity buried within the darkest of challenges, and we need to be alert to those possibilities, even as we help people meet their most basic needs. We need to get clear about priorities: affordable housing, daycare, broadband to make it possible for people to work, technical assistance for businesses, taking care of people, and I want to particularly focus myself on the agricultural sector and the opportunities in the farm-to-table movement. I have the right understanding of our district, its particular needs and challenges, combined with the ability to collaborate effectively with people in Arlington, Manchester, Sandgate, and Sunderland, and with my colleagues in the legislature to be a highly effective legislator should I be fortunate enough to be elected. Thanks. Hope that was too much.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, Jamie, you're next.
Thank you for having me, and everyone, welcome. I appreciate the opportunity of being able to address a couple of things directly. I've chosen to run, quite frankly, for the fact of being a business owner for the past 16 years here in Manchester. I've gotten to know quite a few people. I also have learned a lot from working with many of the local businesses here in town, and I have experienced, just like many of them, a lot of the problems that are existing right now. In my previous encounters with what I have seen, I've also seen that they were not being addressed. We have some serious issues, and just like Seth pointed out, we're going to have a serious financial issue in the near future due to the COVID crisis. And it's a learning curve for all of us, and none of us have the answer. What I do have is I have in the trench, in the main realm of things, I have those people in my back pocket because I work with them every day, whether it's the workers that work for me or work for other employers, whether it's the business owners. That is my primary goal, to make those people's lives more sustainable. And secondly, also make it more affordable with, for example, reaching out and creating programs that will create more affordable housing. We have a shortage of affordable housing. We have a shortage of space for affordable housing. And there's many projects that are in the works, none of which are going to happen overnight. But I feel that I have a really strong, if you will, contact with the people that need that. So I'm in the trenches. I feel that. I'm looking to do something that needs to be done. I'm new at this. I don't have all the answers. I have a huge learning curve ahead of me. I've done a lot of great things, and I think my reputation speaks for itself. And I think by now, most people who have known me know what I'm about. And I'll leave it at that. No fanfare, there's no testimonials.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. Kathleen, your turn.
Thanks, Andrew. For those who don't know me, I moved to Manchester in 1996 when my oldest daughter was 6 months old. And over the years, as my girls went through MEMS and BBA, I've had a successful career here as a working mom, working mostly as a nonprofit editor and manager while raising my daughters. Like many women across the country, I ran for office in 2018 in response to Donald Trump. Not just his policies, but also his destructive approach to politics. I don't like the way Americans talk to each other about politics today. and I don't like the way social media is used to attack and to divide. I wanted to try to be a different kind of leader, and in my first term, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. First of all, I've established very positive relationships in the State House with legislators from all parties. I've done this through my work on the Education Committee and by co-founding the Tourism Caucus. That's a bipartisan group of legislators from tourism towns all across the state. I'm also a very active member of the bipartisan Rural Economic Development Working Group. Second, I've been elected to the leadership team of the Climate Solutions Caucus, where I focus on policies that will help transition Vermont to a sustainable economy, which is really the economy of the future. And for this work, I was really proud to win the Rising Star Award from the Vermont Conservation Voters. Here at home, I organized a forum last fall that led directly to the formation of the Southern Vermont Communications Union District. With hard work from a lot of volunteers, that group has now won significant grant funding. It's been named one of 12 vital economic projects for Southern Vermont, and it's working to bring broadband to underserved regions and roads all across our county. And finally, I've worked really hard to stay in touch with constituents in Arlington, Sandgate, Sunderland, and Manchester through regular coffee hours in all communities. I write regular newsletters, I write regular newspaper columns, I post all the time on my Facebook page, and I update my website. So staying in touch with constituents and being really transparent about how I'm voting and what I'm doing has been very important to me. So I've really worked hard, I think, to stay in touch and let people know how I'm voting and to reach out to people and get feedback on what I'm doing up in Montpelier. I am ready to go back and work with colleagues who know me and respect me. I know how to get things done. I'm ready to build on that, and I think that's going to matter more than ever. So thanks for hearing me out, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Representative James. All right, so we'll move now into our first round of questions. And again, following the alphabetical order idea here, we'll start off with Seth Bongartz. Seth will get 2 minutes to respond to this first question, and then we'll hear from both Jamie and Kathleen for 1 minute each. So, Seth, the hospitality and tourism industries have been badly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, along with virtually every other industry as well. But the hospitality and tourism businesses are such a big part of the economic landscape here in the North Shire. I guess I'm wondering what measures, if you're elected, what measures do you think are needed to help this industry keep going and regain its former strength and get back on their feet? What would be some of the measures you would like to see happen to make that go forward?
Well, that's a great question, obviously, especially for this area where tourism is so much a part of the economy. It's where I spent, obviously, through Hildene, it's where I spent, in some ways, the last 18 years of my life. I think, on one level, it's not going to really get back on its feet until we have a vaccine. On one level, it's that simple. Buses aren't going to come. We're not going to have inside dining. So a lot of it's going to be tough until there's a vaccine. So I think one thing we can do is all pray for a vaccine. But the other is that, is technical assistance. The Bennington County Regional Commission has 2 people dedicated just to economic development. And since the pandemic hit, they've had 350 technical assistance meetings with businesses to help them figure out how to navigate the landscape, how to navigate grants, and to look at their business model and see what's sustainable. So on the tourism, your specific question about tourism, it's going to be the reality is it's going to be hard until there's a vaccine.
Okay.
And we should all do things like go out to restaurants and do everything we can to buy local, to support the bookstore, just by way of one example, and do everything we can to buy local and just help those businesses get through as best we can as individuals in the very short run. The grant program that the legislature put in place with the money that came from the federal government that recently passed stuff out of the legislature helps a lot because a lot of people were able to get grants. That'll help carry them. We need to continue with unemployment for people who have lost their jobs, and there's a lot of people and a lot of hurt. A lot of it is in the tourism industry. And I suppose the answer I should have given first when I think about it is the first thing we have to do is help those workers as well as the business owners who are really hurting. And we have to do that kind of no matter what.
Okay. Jamie, 1 minute or so for a comment or response.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not to sound short-sighted or like I know what's going on, because I think we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. I think it would be really simple. I've dabbled a little bit in tourism when I first came to town, considering buying into a motel here in town. And I noticed that we had problems with our occupancy rate. What I will say, if we want people to come here, we need to make sure that the product that people are coming here for is what they expect. They want to feel safe. They want to feel comfortable. And the best way that we can address that is let's listen to the experts. Let's follow the protocols. Let's show people that we actually adhere to the guideline, that we are wearing masks and we're doing everything. Vermont at the moment is one of the best states in the country following all the best protocols and guidelines that our governors and our local state and towns and municipalities have put forth. And what they have done is kept us having the lowest numbers. We've recently gone through 30 days with absolutely no deaths due to COVID-19. I don't care what side of the political fence people are on, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, people saying this is true, that's not true. I'm not going to go down that road. I think if we show people that we're concerned, like I do with my clients, we're wearing masks every time we walk into someone's house. If we're going to do something, we wipe our hands. If people know that that's how we all do things up here, they're going to feel safe. They're going to come back. The system will rebound.
Okay. Representative James, you have 1 minute for a comment or a reply.
Yeah. So it's amazing how things have changed. I mean, it seems like ages ago that the Tourism Caucus was, up in Montpelier working so hard to increase the amount of funding in the budget for tourism marketing. And life was great and that effort was going really well. And that was pre-COVID. And those efforts, certainly haven't stopped. But the budget is going to look very, very different when we come back in August. We'll hope that we can still restore that money or keep some of that money so that we can safely bring tourists to Vermont. But what that effort will look like, I don't know. I was reading in the Washington Post 2 days ago that Arizona was the last state to close and the first state to reopen. It's now one of our worst hotspots. And businesses are closing and the economy is in a death spiral in a way that's going to be very, very hard to recover from. And to follow along on what Jamie was saying, I think that if we open too quickly, we will hurt our economy worse in the long run. And I think basically, I guess what I'm trying to say that is if we put our economy before public health, both will fail. And it will be harder. It will be harder for both to recover. And so, I do have some. I'm not a modeling expert, but I do have some, I guess, questions about the complex county by county way in which we're doing our modeling. I think it's hard for visitors and business owners and Vermonters to figure out. I'll be interested to see what Governor Scott does with the mask mandate on Friday. I think it's very difficult for municipalities and for businesses to try to individually enforce a mask mandate. I think it puts an onus on businesses and on hotels that's, hard. I personally have already written to Governor Scott requesting a mask mandate because I think it's a public health measure that should really just be on the state. And I think the more that Vermont can continue to be the safest state in the nation, the more in the long run our businesses and our tourist industry will benefit. So I guess that's what I think about that, and I hope that was 1 minute. I don't have a clue.
Well, let's move on to our next question then. And Jamie, you're up here. As you noted in your opening statement, you have stressed affordable housing as one of the issues that you see as crucial. I guess if elected, what specific initiative or initiatives would you push for to encourage more affordable housing to be constructed here? I mean, should the state government take a more active role to jumpstart more affordable housing, and for that matter, middle market housing?
Okay, the simplest thing that I see, and I'm always going to keep my answers simple, I don't want to ramble and go all over the place. We have many empty locations in this town, from motels to homes. We do have possibility of giving people an opportunity to be here. What we need to do is make sure that those that are coming here as migrant workers, for example, that are in the service industry or the building industry, that they would be able to use those spaces, which already exist and are being used, or that we could modify existing spaces that are already empty. And what I'm thinking really simply is Manchester, Arlington, Sunderland, and Sandgate are all suffering the same thing. And what I keep hearing where most of the workers come from, it's not Manchester, it's from our surrounding communities, which I'll also be responsible for. They need opportunity. They need to also be able to afford to live here to do their things. So making their housing more affordable so they can stay here, it's so important. So I've seen the possibility of converting motels into smaller affordable housing things, much like one of the motels here in town already does for migrant workers. We need to make that more possible. If someone's staying here as a migrant worker in a motel, I don't think they should be paying the meals and room tax of 9%. I think we need to modify that to allow that possibility so we have those spaces being used because they're already there. I think we could provide an opportunity for people to come here to help us when we're in our busy times by using those spaces. So yes, I think it's more of a local level problem. I think the business owners themselves know what they need. They just need to be allowed to do it. The biggest argument in every hotel or hospitality is saying, I've got to pay this tax. That's what I have to charge my customers. That's why my bill is so high. So if they have these other spaces they can't use, let's do it for that and not charge them the 9%. I think we can solve the problem with what we already have, and it won't cost anything. The state doesn't have the money to do that. We need to do it ourselves. But we need to give people the opportunity that they can do that.
Okay, Kathleen, you're up next for a 1 minute response.
Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, so focusing, I guess, on what, as a legislator, what the state legislature can do. One conversation that's happening in the legislature is whether we could take out a $50 million bond to set up a revolving loan fund. Treasurer Pierce isn't sure that would be possible, but if we could clear the way for that, that would be fantastic. One of the things that we talk about a lot in the Rural Economic Development Working Group, of which I'm a member, is the importance of fully funding the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. I know that when I've attended last year a meeting of the Arlington Area Renewal Project, they were very excited about using VHCB money to convert some dilapidated housing stock down in Arlington to become affordable or workforce housing. I'm not sure if that project worked out, but I think it went forward. So funding the VHCB is something the legislature really needs to be in tune with. I know that Act 250 is going forward. We'll see how that works out. But there's a provision in there that would basically promote housing development in Manchester. It would be good for us by promoting housing development in our designated downtowns, by easing up Act 250 restrictions in designated downtowns. It would make it easier basically to build housing in our designated downtowns. That would be great for Manchester. And I've already reached out to Arlington to see how that could work for them in the long run too.
Okay.
Is that a minute?
Close.
More like four.
Those are state level solutions that I think would be useful for our district.
All right. Seth.
Can I add something to that? May I add something to that? May I add something?
Okay.
One thing Kathleen mentioned was Act 250, and it's a painful thing to talk about. I just want to say one thing about Act 250. Act 250 was great back in the 70s and 80s when it was first created. I think that's one of the biggest problems up in the legislature right now, that we need to do something to modify that, change it, or start with something completely different. It's really constricting what businesses need to be able to provide a solution to these problems.
We're going to have a chance to talk about Act 250 fairly soon, so hang on to that thought. Seth, your turn now. 1 minute on the affordable housing question.
I think the solution is a combination of local and state, I think. I was one of the early proponents, and I was there as the Housing and Conservation Board was being put together. It's been that long ago since I was in the legislature. And so I agree totally with restoring full funding. It was supposed to be all the money from the property transfer tax. It's kind of been nickel and dime since, and it all needs to go back because the Housing and Conservation Board has done remarkable work helping build downtowns through the state, partially with housing, business development. They've done some just remarkable work. We need to fully fund that. It's one of the great success stories in Vermont. And the real issue here, we haven't quite said it, but I think everybody's implying it. Our real issue was workforce housing. The Shars Housing and the other housing authorities are doing a great job for low-income housing. God bless them. Thank you so much for what you're doing. But we now need to focus. We also need to focus on workforce housing. We need to do things like encouraging towns to loosen restrictions in downtowns, especially with sewer and water hookups. We need to actually help provide money as we can to help towns expand especially their sewer hookups, because that's the only way affordable housing really works, is if it has, especially in larger scale, is if it has access to sewer, in particular water is helpful. And I am very keenly interested in the notion of the $50 million bond for workforce housing. The great thing about that is, of course, you're loaning the money, it gets repaid, you can keep doing it. So this is one of those times when we talk about housing all the time, and we need to get serious about it. It's a real priority, and if it's going to be a priority, we really have to figure out how we're going to do it. Not can we do it, but how we're going to do it.
Okay, great.
You're here. Sorry. A cheer from the peanut gallery.
Okay. Well, Representative James, you get the next question and 2 minutes to answer here. As you know, the legislature failed by one vote to override Governor Scott's veto of a paid family leave plan, which had passed both houses of the legislature. Do you think the legislature should try again with the same plan that the governor vetoed earlier this year, which relied on a mandatory payroll tax for funding that the governor found objectionable? Or should we come up with a different plan, a whole different approach, or what would be your feeling on the right strategy around that issue?
Yeah, well, I'm a big proponent of paid family leave. It was one of the policies that I campaigned on when I ran in 2018. And I was very disappointed to see that bill fail by one vote. And I think that if there's anything we discovered during the COVID-19 crisis, it is that working Vermonters need a safety net. I mean, I think that everybody is well aware of what happened with the unemployment, with the run on unemployment, and the fact that that folks need a safety net when they are suddenly and unexpectedly out of work. And that's the main reason I supported the mandatory approach. The voluntary approach that some folks supported, and I understood the logic behind that, but it sort of relies on the fact that you can plan ahead and that you think you're going to know when you need an insurance plan. And while life often works like that, life sometimes doesn't work like that. And You don't know always when you're going to suddenly become ill, or your spouse is going to need emergency surgery, or you're going to have a pandemic. And so I remain a strong proponent of family leave. And I remain a proponent of a mandatory approach because it makes the program much more affordable. It keeps the rates down. And if you have mandatory buy-in, like I said, with the voluntary approach, a lot fewer people participate, and so the rates get higher, and you can kind of have a death spiral as people opt out.
Okay, Seth, your turn for a 1-minute comment.
I'm in favor of paid family leave philosophically. It is it'll actually be run by an insurance company, so it really is in fact insurance. And what we're talking about are those unexpected instances and people needing to help, and then having the money for employers to replace that person while they're out for a short amount of time, so without them having to pay for it. So I also agree with with Kathleen that it has to be a large pool. Insurance only works with a large pool. So, but we are going to have to take a look at it. Times are different now than they were a year ago. It was a little bit easier a year ago. Size, when it starts, those kinds of things, we're going to have to look at carefully because we have, the issues that we have to deal with the pandemic. So that's what I have to say.
Okay, Jamie, your turn. Paid family leave.
Okay. I understand the point of view of the mandatory and also of if someone chooses to take it. What I do know about the bill, and one of the reasons that it failed, is that there are many instances such as the education department, they already have a system in place. They would effectively, if I'm correctly informed, would have paid into that double and seen no benefit for it. Temporary workers would not see a benefit from it either. I don't know all the specifics, but from what I'm seeing, the bill itself just needs to be completely scrapped. It needs to be put together better. It doesn't need something that's going to last a whole year in committee or some sort of conversation that's ongoing, because that seems to be the ongoing problem. I would just say this: it just needs to be simplified, and it needs to be more clear and not let people pay double. People are paying too much as it is. When I look at workman's comps that we're paying for our employees, it's $1,000 per person per month because of the trade that I work in. You're going to add another bill on top of that, they're not going to take it. I'm going to lose employees. We won't need affordable housing because we won't have workers.
Okay, that completes the first round of questions. We'll go on to our second round, and back to you, Seth, for this first question. What, in your view, is the biggest challenge facing the public pre-K through 12 education system in Vermont? And what should be done to fix that? Is it cost? Is it demographics? Lack of universally available broadband? Or something else? What would be your approach to that?
Are you talking about within the context of the pandemic, or once we're out of the pandemic?
Once we're out of the pandemic.
Once we're out of the pandemic. Well, our biggest issue, frankly, is population. And we've lost a third of we've gone from 120 to 80,000, roughly speaking, school children in Vermont over the last 15 or 20 years, whatever that number is. So what we have is a shrinking demographic. And we need to focus on bringing families here, encouraging people to come, encouraging people to live here, and therefore have their kids be part of the school system. And then we need to build an economy that's vibrant enough that a lot of them stay. So this area is particularly well positioned when you talk. So the four towns of this district are particularly well positioned because we have such excellent schools. We've got a range of options for people who are thinking about coming here with their families. And especially now we have the opportunity, and here's the broadband piece, where families are coming, they are learning that they actually can work from home, and therefore they can work from here. They are thinking about staying, and that's happening. We know that's happening. More people are coming. So the real issue isn't so much about schools per se as it is building the vibrant economy in Vermont, providing affordable housing, we've got to have affordable daycare for people. People need to be able to work. We've got a workforce problem in Vermont, not enough people to fill a lot of key jobs. And so thinking about the question that you're raising about education, I think it's really all about demographics and helping to build the vibrant, very welcoming economy, by the way. We need to welcome people to this state and to this area. They're going to look different from us. It's going to be a different world, but we have to be absolutely welcoming to everybody, and we need to send that message loud and clear across the country, and especially to our neighbors who are within range of people actually thinking about moving here.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, you're next. Thoughts on challenges facing public education in Vermont?
I don't know enough about the education to give a really good answer. I do like a couple of things that I heard that Seth had said. The one thing that I will say is if we want people, just like he also had suggested, we need to keep it affordable that more people may desire to move here to use the benefit of our school systems in this area. We do have some of the best schools. They are not the best in Vermont, but they are up there. And honestly, I don't want to speculate on that right now because this COVID thing is such a big unknown. Everybody's speculating too much about when it possibly it might be over. I just would rather deal with the problem that we're in now and see how we can get the kids to at least get an adequate education during this crisis. And in the meantime, if that works, then we can work on the next problem.
Okay. Kathleen, your turn.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer from a statewide perspective because as Seth said, the mix of schools, both independent and public, that we have around here in our region is off the charts fantastic. So I guess speaking now as a member of the Education Committee and looking statewide, the challenges facing Vermont's public school system as a whole, we've got some challenges. We just took a look at the weighting study, which I'm sure everyone has heard about. That study takes a look at how we fund our students or at how we weight the different costs of funding students who attend rural schools, who are low income, who attend secondary schools. And we are going to have to fix the way we do that because there are some big inequities. And when we fix that, that is going to have some really significant impacts on our funding system. And unfortunately, it's going to have some bummer impacts for our communities, and we're going to have to phase that in over time. So the weighting study is going to be a big deal, and we really need to take a serious look also at the education finance system, unfortunately. There are huge inequities in school buildings across the state. We have some excellent facilities around here. We've got buildings up in the Northeast Kingdom that are literally falling apart. Our pre-K system here in our community, again, we've got a full day, amazing system that taxpayers pay for. We have districts where families use, the 10-hour voucher, and that's all they have. And then, the Vermont State Colleges.
Let me move on, though, to the next question for Jamie Dufour here. And that has to do with your thoughts on Vermont's healthcare system. 7 or 8 years ago, then Governor Peter Shumlin advanced a single-payer program, but that they had to pull the plug on that, I think, in 2014, when the numbers just didn't work out. The costs and the tax implications were just too gigantic to deal with. So I guess what if you're elected? What would be your approach going into office around healthcare and health insurance in the state? Are we do we have something in place that's kind of quote unquote good enough, or is there an area for improvement?
Okay. Again, this will be one of those questions I don't really have enough experience to give a good answer about. What I do know as a business owner is healthcare is a daily question. It's a daily issue, daily problem. Every business owner addresses it, and larger businesses typically also have the same shortfalls as the smaller businesses like mine when it comes to providing healthcare. That is just not an equal situation for each person, meaning that if you want to collectively force people to put something into a pot so that they can all have healthcare, Vermont does have a good healthcare system. What we need to do, though, is make sure that the numbers aren't inflated, make sure that what's being charged is correct. Let's not charge $50 for a bag of saline. Things like that need to be kept in check because that's part of the problem with healthcare costs. Some things are just terribly inflated. I just recently had an experience where I nearly lost a finger, and I went to the local Manchester Health Center, and Dr. Sterling took and put my finger back together, which I'm happy to say is still in one piece. And he did a great job. I paid the bill myself, and it was very affordable. And when you inflate things by, making claims to insurance companies where you have to charge, in some cases, more than what someone could actually have to pay if they paid themselves, the single-payer healthcare system is actually one of the best ways to achieve that. But it's really hard to get the mindset of everyone on both sides or any side in between to agree to that. I don't have an answer for that. I think what we have to do is keep it simple. Make it so that when someone does get hurt, they're not going to say, you know what, I'm just going to go to work tomorrow. I can't afford to stay home. That's what I've heard all over the last 4 to 5 months during the pandemic. People say, I have to go to work because I can't afford not to. We need to make sure that if something happens to them, that there's a system in place that they can go, whether they need to pay it at a later date, but make sure that it's reasonable and affordable. That's the best I can come up with.
Okay, very good. Kathleen, your turn on healthcare, health insurance.
Yeah, I mean, we all have a big stack of things sitting by the side of our bed that we're intending to read. So my stack has been getting bigger and bigger. The auditor Hofford has released his, report on OneCare, and I intend to read it. I really am trying to kind of increasingly wrap my head around OneCare, which, as we know, is our state's, accountable care organization, and try to get a handle on how it's doing. I know that we're in the middle of our, I guess it's our trial period, or our period in which, and I hope I'm explaining this properly, but as I understand it, we're giving OneCare a shot. And I'm really curious to kind of start learning more about that and figure out whether this is a great experiment that's getting off to a bumpy start, or whether we need to take a harder look at that. One thing that I really hope happens is that I know the legislature passed a bill that would allow Vermont to start buying its prescription meds in bulk from Canada, and we're waiting on federal approval from that. It just seems to be taking forever. That would save Vermonters a lot of money. That really needs to happen. Maybe after November, that will change. So we'll see what happens with that. That was probably a minute.
All right. Seth, your turn on health insurance, healthcare. Where should we go from here?
Well, one thing I can tell you is that as an employer for the last 18 years at Hildene, and dealing with 35, 36, 37 employees, we struggled to provide health insurance for our employees. And it's always a tension between providing the health insurance and then how much you can pay, because an employer only has so much money. So I guess what I'm saying is that I've really experienced the agony of this firsthand during my 18 years at Hildene. I will also say that as somebody who was probably a skeptic beforehand, and this is more of it's not about the state level, but on the national level, I'm really beginning to think Medicare for all or some form of that, or the public option is critical to this discussion, because the pandemic has really exposed the sort of fallacy, if you will, of employer-based healthcare as people are losing their jobs, losing their health insurance. And to have it tied to to an employer, really, I'm really beginning to think doesn't make sense. I also think that's not going to happen in Vermont, though. We're not going to, I think a single payer in Vermont is, we're too small. We tried it, it didn't work. So I think all we can do is by the way, we should celebrate the amazing, and Jamie mentioned this, celebrate the amazing system of healthcare we have in Vermont. We've got great hospitals, great providers. We have some holes in difficulty for individual providers being able to make it, but overall, we have an amazing system. And I think with Kathleen on this, we have to give one care a chance, and we hope it can work. But it's a serious problem.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Representative James, you get the next question as the first responder here. This is our final and sixth question of this part of our discussion.
What will it be?
Yeah.
What will it be?
What's the next step, in your opinion, on environmental legislation that the legislature needs to pass and get the governor to sign? Is it the Global Warming Solution Act, or as came up earlier, perhaps a revision of Act 250 or something else?
Yeah, so it is absolutely the Global Warming Solutions Act, which unfortunately right now is the target of a smear campaign. So I am here to stick up for it and to set the record straight. The Global Warming Solutions Act is kind of a foundational bill, I think, to help transition Vermont to a 21st century economy. So if you want to talk about a job growth engine, and if you want to talk about an economic growth engine, let's talk about the Global Warming Solutions Act. This bill passed the House in February with overwhelming support. It passed by 105 to 37 tripartisan support. And similarly overwhelming support in the Senate last month. And it's now back in the House, and I hope we'll be able to take it up in August. What this bill does is, and I've got some notes on it because I figured it would come up. Today. So, climate change is an environmental issue. It's a public health issue, and people need to understand that climate action in Vermont is also very fundamentally an economic issue. And this is about transitioning our economy away from its reliance on imported fossil fuels and into clean energy. So in the building and transportation sectors, about 75 cents of every dollar we spend on fossil fuels goes right out of the state. So as we come out of the COVID pandemic and the COVID shutdown, and we start to think about rebuilding a new 21st century economy, this is a really good time to start thinking about building a clean energy economy and start thinking about investing in the clean energy sector, because that's one of our fastest growing job sectors. These are good paying jobs. So we're talking about things like installing solar panels. We're talking about things like weatherizing homes. We're talking about things like giving people incentives to switch to more fuel-efficient vehicles. We're talking about things like sustainable ag, sustainable forestry, supporting local food systems, supporting clean water, building culverts for flood protection. And the Global Warming Solutions Act does that by creating a statewide climate council that's basically tasked with creating a long-term vision for Vermont to do this, creating a framework for doing this, and also turning our carbon emissions goals, which have been aspirational to date, into mandates. So basically, it's a jobs bill and it's an economic bill, and we need to go with the votes, which were overwhelming in both the House and the Senate, and get this thing passed. So that's my thought on that.
All right. Seth, your turn. 1 minute.
Seth, did you say me?
Yep.
Well, basically, I agree with Kathleen. The fact that 75 cents on every energy dollar goes out of state, that actually, I did a little bit of research on that. That actually translates to more than $100 million in Bennington County alone going out of state on an annual basis. Keeping those dollars here makes a lot of sense. It's pretty obvious that weatherization makes sense, that solar makes sense, that electric cars make sense. We're going to have to do some work on the grid, heat pumps, and most of that is actually job producing. And, so as Kathleen says, there's been a disinformation campaign about this. I wish that instead of calling it the Global Warming Solution Act, it was called something more like the Energy Security and Job Creation Act, because that's really what's going on here. And, every time we should listen to young people on this issue. They are scared to death. They know that it's their future and they want action. And for us to do this, to be a leader in this effort is going to help position Vermont once again as the state that is really living its values, a truly, the term green economy, the green state, is really critical for us. And I'm in favor of this piece of legislation. I think it really is a job creation act, and it's a job and it's a money saving act for all the money that we'll keep in the state, in this district, in this county, as opposed to sending it out of state.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, you get the last word on this one. I knew you had mentioned the Act 50 bill there a moment ago, so if you wanted to work that into your answer, that certainly would be fine.
One of the things that's concerning me about that, and I'm not completely fully privy of all the information in the bill, I haven't read it, have not seen it. I'm a little bit worried about where it's going to put certain people, certain businesses in play. What I'm afraid that could happen, and this is just a hypothetical thought process based on how I think, it almost sounds like a Nazi organization where it's going to force people to do things that it's going to make businesses close. They're going to have to adhere to guidelines. There's going to be an oversight committee that no one will be able to stop, and they'll say what needs to be done, and people won't be able to survive that. It's going to drive more people out. I think Vermont's already doing pretty good with its green environment. We are the Green Mountain State. We do a lot of things right with solar energy, wind energy. I just finally made the cutoff for the Tesla battery for my home with Vermont Electric. And we've done the things like clearing trees so that we can put solar panels on our home. I'm totally with the idea of going green, but we can't be forcing people to do it, just like we can't force them to pay the healthcare. We don't have the money. I don't know where the money is going to come from to pay for those things that are being suggested by the bill that Kathleen tried to explain. And I agree that green jobs are good. I don't know what we're doing to keep the people here that can afford it. I have one friend that was here for 2 years working to install solar panels, where you see all these solar farms here in the state. And then from 1 minute to the next, they get whisked off to another state. They're not keeping the people here. We're not creating jobs. We're seeing people come from out of state, do those jobs. We're not doing anything to encourage people to hire people in this state to do those jobs. We're not giving them the education or the training to be competitive to do those jobs. If you look at some of the larger projects in the state, it's always a contractor from elsewhere. So we can say what we want, but we're not keeping the jobs in Vermont. We're just inviting outside sources to come and profit off of that because we don't have anybody here to do that.
We're at the part, of the program where we can all kind of talk a little bit. I will say that we're doing, at our house, we're installing solar panels. And one of the things that I thought was just a lot of things are exciting about it for us. But one of them is that I've engaged with 2 young people who are working for the company, both Burton grad.
We worked to get Seth back. Jamie, you might want to check out Massachusetts passed a Global Warming Solutions Act 10 years ago. And since they passed it, the state website has a 10th anniversary report on this. And since Mass passed it, their carbon emissions, in other words, their pollution, has dropped radically, and their economy has taken off. Their clean energy economy has just boomed. So that bill has been very successful in Massachusetts. And the bill is, it's really more about providing incentives to people than, forcing people out, I guess.
Let me rephrase my answer, Kathleen. And what I will say is, if it's going to provide incentives for people, we need to give priority to people in Vermont. We need to give priority to the kids coming out of school, like from the Burn graduates. One of them used to work for me before he went to go and work with Bill LaBerge, who's working on his solar system for Seth. What we need to do is we need to make it more incentive for those people that did go to school here, that chose to stay here for whatever the reason is that they got stuck in Vermont. And let's give it to them first. We're not doing that.
How do you think?
We need to do that
I'm
better.
not sure I guess I'm not sure how you thought it would be for people from away.
Because every time I see something like that, it always is a company from out of state. When the solar farms are being built here in Vermont, it's always a firm from somewhere else. The workers are coming from elsewhere. That's what I'm saying. Massachusetts has a very tech-savvy state. It's a very high populous state with many education institutions there just in the technical field. We don't have that in Vermont. How are we going to bring them here, provide them an opportunity, give them a chance to, hey, I can use my cell phone here. We can't even do that. We're not going to attract those people here until we fix all these other things. If you want to do that, sure, but make sure that it first goes to someone local. If a project is being done in Manchester, make sure that local contractors get that opportunity before it's someone coming down from Montpelier or from Burlington, like we've seen in the past. Give those people the first chance. We have companies working here from New Hampshire because we're not giving it to the local guys, where the money would stay locally. That's the biggest problem in our state.
One of the issues that I've done a lot of work on this year up in the legislature and here in our region is workforce development and career and technical ed. So I think we share an issue. I guess we share an interest there. I've been down to Southwest Tech, the newly renamed Southwest Tech, and had a meeting with a couple of folks there to see what they're all about. And I'm really interested in the work that's being done at Advance Vermont. And I don't know if you're familiar with their work, but you should really check out that website because I think you'd be all over it. That's a partnership.
I appreciate the tip. We'll check that out. Thank you for telling me about that.
Okay.
What I'm trying to stress is we need to make sure that we give people here first the opportunity. That's how we keep the money in the state. That's how we keep the state from going bankrupt.
That's what Advance Vermont is about. So you should check out their work. It's something that I'm strongly supporting, and I'm going to be writing a column about it in a future issue of Manchester Journal.
So I got partway through that.
Lost you.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say about it. Is I think that I think there's there's weatherization, solar installation, huge opportunity, and a lot of good jobs for Vermonters. It's by the way, solar installation is one of the fastest growing industries in Vermont, and it's actually continued through the pandemic. It's continued. So that just shows how stable it is, and what an opportunity is. And like I said, when it's worth putting in our system here, the two people we've been dealing with are these two great young Burton grads. 30 years old with great jobs. So I love it.
So we'll go in reverse order from our opening statement. So that means we'll start with Representative James and then go to Jamie and then Seth. We'll get the last word. So Kathleen, you go first for the closing statements.
Sounds good. Well, I think mine's just 1 minute. I didn't know we were going to get extra time, so I'm not going to wing it.
That's okay.
I think it's 1 minute. All right. So as someone who spent the last 20 years as a working mom here in the North Shire, I'm always mindful of the issues that face families. Finding a good paying job, keeping a small business afloat, finding and paying for affordable childcare, buying a home, and how hard it is to juggle kids, jobs, and life in a 1 or 2 income household. This is tough even when times are good. Over the next 2 years, the economic fallout from COVID-19 will force very, very difficult financial choices on families on businesses, and on the legislature. These votes and these decisions are not going to be easy. One thing I can promise is that I will always carefully consider the needs of families and the small businesses that you own and support. In my first term, I have gained a lot of experience and knowledge, and I am ready to build on that. I've also built a valuable network of positive relationships with colleagues of all parties in the State House. The next biennium is going to be difficult. It is critical that our district send a strong collaborative delegation to Montpelier. I've known Seth for more than 20 years, and I'm proud to be running with him on a strong ticket. I'm confident that we'll be an effective and respected team for Bennington 4. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I'm ready to go back, and I hope we'll have your vote in the primary and again in November. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for supporting me, and thanks for being here.
Okay, Jamie Dufour, you're next.
Thanks, Kathleen. I appreciate your words on that. That was really good to hear as a perspective of a single mom. One of the things that I will say, and it's to keep it short and sweet, it's something that I mentioned in my interview in the Manchester Journal, was that one of the things that I will stress in times of crisis is something that I've experienced my entire life, whether I was a young person being in foster care, adopted homes, moving about. I never got a handout. I never received anything. I don't know what it's like to have a permanent family. I'm just starting to experience that now with my girlfriend and her children who have been staying with me. I don't have that experience, but what my experience is after being in the time that I served in the military, trying to put myself through school, gaining a scholarship, doing this, doing that, I didn't get a handout. So I know what it's like to work against the grain. I know what it's like to work when the odds are against you. I think that's what makes me qualified to help us get through what we have now as a crisis with the COVID-19. It's a huge learning curve for everybody. No one has the answers, but I believe my perseverance, my success that I've built without a handout from anyone, I think that I would be the right person to do that.
Okay, Mr. Bongartz, you get the last word here on a closing statement.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'd say is that it's just how strange it is, in a way, to run a campaign without being able to be out meeting with people. When I've run campaigns in the past, it's been door to door and conversations and getting clarity about people's needs and wishes and what they want to see happen. I lament not being able to do that because I enjoy it, and frankly, I like people. I just like that part of the process, and anyway, we can't do it. So one of the things that I've long marveled about is how in such a small state, 246 towns can be so different from each other, so distinct and so different. And our districts, 4 towns fit that mold. They're very different. I know all 4 towns, and my wife and I have friends all over the district, and I'm going to rely on them, discussions with them and with leaders in those towns to do the best job I can possibly do, bringing their needs and aspirations to Montpelier. I want to help them. I want to help the people of this district be successful. I spent much of my time, focused on Manchester because that's what you do in Vermont. You focus on the town in which you live. But I want to be very clear, and I really want to help to represent all 4 towns with equal vigor, and I'm going to do that. So I've also put a lot of effort into trying to tie the county together, which is consistent with the notion of a district through the shires and tying all of Vermont together through my statewide involvement. And I will say that Kathleen is a very effective, incredibly hardworking representative for this district. She exemplifies the reality that being a legislator is actually often very tedious, hard work, sitting in committees, attending meetings, listening, learning the issues. She's effective because she listens, she cares, and she's respected, and she works well with others. And I threw that in because more than ever, we need a highly effective team for this district. And then we need to this district can help pull the entire county together. We need to pull the entire Bennington County delegation together to make sure we have a unified, effective voice. Pulling people together is one of the things that I'm particularly good at. It's what I've been doing my whole adult life. And I want to be able to bring that knowledge and those abilities and skills to Montpelier on behalf of the people of this district. Thank you.
Okay, well, that'll have to do it for now. Thank you all again for being with us to share your views on these and all these important issues that are facing not only the district but the state. I want to thank Representative Kathleen James, Jamie Dufour, Seth Bongartz. They're the three candidates on the Democratic primary. It'll be held on August 11th. And as we said at the start, early voting is underway. You can cast your ballots anytime. But anyway, thank you all again. And also to our audience, thank you for being with us today. I hope you found the discussion we've just heard interesting and informative, and will help you inform your vote when you go to the polls. And I guess we'll leave it there. Stay safe, everybody. And
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, GNAT.
Thank you, GNAT. Thanks,
Okay.
Andrew.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
you.
Jamie. Thanks, Seth.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you out there in
Bye-bye.
the trail.
All right.
Pleasant evening.